Good afternoon, fellow chamber members and guests. Thank you all for coming here. I'm lucky enough to introduce our next speaker. When you picture a backyard barbecue, two bold colors probably spring to mind. French's Sunshine Yellow Mustard and the unmistakable red of Frank's Red Hot. This morning, we're joined by the leader who made both bottles stand for something bigger than condiments, Mr. Elliot Penner, former president of the French's Food Company. As president, Elliot introduced the French's Promise, a sweeping pledge to strip out artificial ingredients while sourcing 100% Canadian tomatoes for ketchup and prairie-grown mustard seed for their classic yellow squeeze. That cleaner label, grown here, made here strategy not only delighted consumers, it fueled record growth across the business. But Elliot didn't stop at mustard and ketchup. He steered Frank's Red Hot from cult favorite to the world's #1 hot sauce brand, turbocharging sales with the now iconic "I put that bleep on everything" campaign and expanding distribution to more than 30 countries. Purpose has always seasoned Elliot's profits. Under his watch, French's partnered with Food Banks Canada to deliver over 20 million meals, a commitment that inspired him to launch the EJP For Good Foundation, which rescues surplus Canadian crops and turns them into nutritious products for food banks nationwide. Across 3 decades in consumer goods, Elliot has shown that doing what's right for growers, communities, and the planet can also be great for the bottom line. Please join me in giving a warm chamber welcome to a person I'm proud to call my friend, and to a leader who proves business can truly be for good, Mr. Elliot Penner.
Wow, my mother would like that, and my wife would probably doubt it, so that's... And first, before I start, I wanted to say I heard that lunch was fantastic, but it's siesta food, which makes you tired. So I'm watching for anybody that falls asleep here. I'm going to make sure. Hopefully I'm entertaining enough that you don't think that. You're looking at a lucky guy here. I'm probably one of the luckiest guys in the world. At least that's how I feel about things. I was lucky enough to have a great family that supported me, and I was lucky enough to be educated at Cambridge, which is a great start, right? I mean, it's a great place to be educated. The thing is, it's Preston, Ontario, and Cambridge, Ontario, and not Cambridge University. So I just want to make sure you understand I'm a local. I'm nobody that they've imported. I'm going to start off today, and I'm going to tell you a little story. And that story, hopefully you'll see it throughout this presentation and how it changed my life. It happened when I was about 6 years old, maybe 7. And it happened in my garage with my father. You know, my father was a guy who had a tough life. He was adopted, and he had some times in his early childhood that weren't so great. And I think that probably shaped him maybe in some of the things, the way he saw things. Because when you don't have much, everything looks of value to you, doesn't it? Well, we didn't have a lot in those days. And as any young family in Ontario at the time, you have to make fun with not much. So our big exciting day was to go from Preston, Ontario, in a car to the parks in Toronto along Lakeshore. They had those planes there. We thought, this is magical. We're going to the big smoke. You know, this was a big city for us. And we wanted to barbecue. Never had a barbecue. We didn't have a hibachi. We didn't have anything like that. So I'm with my father. I'm in the garage, and he's looking around. He's thinking, how do we do this? Now, we had just had our electricity changed from the old knob and tube wiring to breakers. And there was the old black box that the electrical box had. He looked at it and he said, that'll work. I don't know what he's talking about, right? And then he got this little grate from an old fridge we had there. And he looked at it and he cut it and he put that grate inside the box and opened the lid, put it in there. He said, this is perfect. We'll put coal or we'll put charcoal in there. We can put this on top and we can barbecue our meat, our hot dog, whatever. And we can close it up. It even closes up. It's like a portable thing. Now, At the time, I didn't realize really what was going on, right? But as I thought about it years later, there was a huge lesson in this, in that value is all around you. It's everywhere. It's just how you look at it. If you miss that opportunity, if you miss that, it goes away. But if you take the time to take a look a little closer and to listen, you'll see there's value in so many things around you. You just need to tap them. And hopefully today you'll see this all through this presentation, okay? So, I said I was a lucky guy. I got to run the French's Food Company, and what a great business it was. We're a company that was lucky enough to be part of pretty much everybody's backyard or a special occasion. Think about it, a birthday party. We were there. When it was Memorial Day, or it was 4th of July, or in Canada, it was the Queen's birthday, or Canada Day, we were there. In the UK, we were there for holidays even there. We were lucky enough to be center of that table for important periods in people's lives. And that was a really special place for us. And as I started to really respect that, I started to think about those families, and I started to think about all those opportunities that gave us by being so close to what mattered for them. As we started to have competition, you say, how do you diversify your company? How do you make it different? And you see, we're about a $600 million company. In the food industry, that's pretty small, right? And the way you survive as a small company is to make a lot of money and have a product that everybody believes is better than anybody else's. If not, someone's going to take it away from you. So you don't have a lot of cash to do endless research. And you really got to start asking consumers questions. And what I found was every country I went to, when I talked to consumers, they said the same thing. The exact same thing. It didn't matter where it was. And this is why I get so frustrated when I hear about all these differences with countries and people complaining. The average person wants the exact same thing. They care about their family. They care about their neighbors. They care about what they feed their kids. They want to do well. They want to do well for their family. They want to help out. Sometimes they don't know how to do that, but they care about the same things. I saw that in Russia. I saw it in the United States. I saw it in Canada. I saw it in Japan. And that started to really hit me over the head. I'm spending this money on research. They're coming back with all this stuff, when in fact, it's sitting right in front of me. If I can touch them on the thing that matters the most, then I should be successful. My brand should be different than somebody else's. But it's got to be authentic, right? You can't do it in a way that just says, I'll just write this on a bottle. You've got to start to behave that way, because authenticity is the most important thing. And you've seen what's happened to companies that aren't authentic, right? My friends over at 3G and Bud, they had a problem with their brand, right? Because it wasn't an authentic thing they did. It was an opportunistic thing they did. And if I shared anything with anybody, it was be authentic, don't be opportunistic. So we looked at our brand and we said, what can we do to actually insulate us from our competition? Well, we can do the right thing. Now, before people were even talking about better for you products, or local, or homegrown, we launched the French's Promise. And what the French's Promise said was, we're going to look at our ingredients, and we're going to look at our packaging, and we're going to look at everything we do, and we're going to make sure that it's clean. It's clean, and it's effective, and it doesn't diminish anything from anybody. And that took a little bit of effort, right? It cost some money to do that. But we really believed in the end that's how we would differentiate. And if you look at how we launched ketchup, that was the big piece of us, right? We weren't using high fructose corn syrup. We were using locally grown tomatoes with real sugar. And when you do those kinds of things, it's hard for competition to come after you, because they got to change the way they've been doing business for years. But if your whole mindset is about doing that as a company, everybody gets on board. And it led to #1 product ranges for us in pretty much every category we're in. We were so lucky and so blessed to have this brand that allowed us to get into people's homes and allowed us to really take that #1 position. It really taught us a lesson that you can grow a business with phenomenal sales and profits by doing the right thing. And you know what's really interesting? In this world where you're in a fierce competition for employees, there are people that will just nod to the boss no matter what he says. But today's youngsters, the consumers of tomorrow, they think a little more. And they don't want to work at companies that just pay them. They want to work at companies that matter, that have an impact. And I found if I went up and I talked about business, we had these town hall meetings, you have 150 of your brightest, and you start talking about results, you see them back there. I'm not an idiot. I can see them nodding off or putting their heads down, But if I talked about this, about the impact we were making in communities, they leaned forward and they started to pay attention. And I realized this is how you hold good employees. You make them purposeful. You give them a reason to be. You got to pay them. You got to give them a career path. But if you can take that and blend it with something that says we do a better job than somebody else and do a little better than anybody else does, they want to work for you. And that helped us. That really helped us. What I found was this. Sometimes you've got to take a bit of a risk, but you also have to understand that people tell you the truth sometimes, and you've got to pay attention. So I'm going to tell you this little story about Frank's Red Hot. Frank's Red Hot was a brand that was probably number 3 in the hot sauce business. I mean, Tabasco was number 1, right? And when I got to French's years ago, they had this commercial. And it was this African-American gentleman sitting on a porch with a banjo playing a song, and this was the commercial for Frank's Red Hot. And I thought, wow, that's not a very good commercial. I don't think that's a really great way to talk about the brand. So we started to look for a solution. And we had African-American population love the product, but I wanted to expand that around the world, and that was really pigeonholing us and not being the best we could be. So we started to ask consumers what they thought. And this guy, Rocky, came to me. He was a great ad guy from New York. He said, Penner, I got to talk to you about something here. We found the strongest single insight we've ever had on any brand in my 25, 30 years of this business. I said, what's that, Rocky? I'm kind of excited. He said, well, everybody we asked had the same comment. Oh, Frank's Red Hot. I put that bleep on everything. Now, the bleep wasn't bleep. It was the word. And I kind of thought, well, that's interesting. So what else do you want to talk to me about? He said, no, that's what I'm talking to you about, Elliot. And I said, well, what are you talking to me about here? This is crazy. I can't even fathom how I could use this. And he said, well, no, Elliot, it's the strongest insight we've ever had in our lives. I said, Rocky, if you think I'm going to be the guy that says that word around food, I'll be gone in 20 minutes and I'll be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal saying I'm an idiot. It's never going to happen. He said, well, I know, but it's such a strong insight. Now, right there, I could have walked away and said, hey, that's stupid, let's move on. But remember that lesson, there's hidden value in things, and you got to think about that. So I went back and I thought about it. I said, if it's that strong an insight, you don't need to say the word, do you? Because people get it. And if an older lady said it, it wouldn't be offensive. Because you really put up with a lot from your grandmother, don't you? Because she deserves to have a lot. Yeah? And if I somehow make it involved with usage, they'll use a lot of product too. And what happened was, we found this gal from Vancouver. She's about 103 now. She's passed on. I believe I can't find her anymore. She was 91 in 2014. But she had never done anything on TV. She had never done a commercial. She was knitting and crocheting. And we found her, and she was perfect for the brand because she was authentic. She was real. And we got her to launch these commercials that look like this.
Lovely. How does one make such delightful cucumber sandwiches?
Frank's Red Hot sauce, Your Majesty. I put that on everything. Frank's Red Hot. I put that on everything.
Well, that seems kind of funny today. It took the brand from number 3 to number 1 in the world because that insight was so strong that people did recognize that really it did add flavor. And by putting that spot, it said use the product and use it on everything. So people did. They started putting it on. I was in the UK and I was doing this consumer interaction and they were testing it and I knew we were successful when a guy said, "Oh, this is lovely." And they talk so nice. "This is lovely. I can see that on my cheese on toast after I come back from the pub." And I knew if that guy sees it on cheese on toast, we are successful because that is their host food. And we went from number 3 to number 1. Everybody thought we were crazy, but Jean Hamilton became a superstar overnight. And guess what? She got an agent about 3 months later and started to negotiate for more money. The cute thing about Jean's agent was she sounded like a truck driver, but looked like Elle McPherson. She was from Vancouver. And she called me, and she was so slick. She said, "Penner, I think you're a blue-collar guy in a white-collar shirt." I don't know what that meant, but she was trying to get me, right? And she said, "Normally what we do is we do the back 5 years of the contract up front." I said, "Not when the commercial talent is 94 years old, we don't." Like she was gonna get Jean's last 5 years up front for Jean, and we had to negotiate around that. But it became such a success, and that's an insight that says don't dismiss things just because you don't think they're going to work. Work really hard to see the value in them, and guess what? It can be successful. That led us to look at a lot of things. And recently in the election, you've seen that people are all talking about Canada and nationalism and Canadian can be good and whatever. It's kind of a modern thing here. We're all feeling pretty good about ourselves, right? We were doing that about 10 years ago. We were lucky enough to see the benefit in Canada and the consumers here and the community here that we actually changed how we marketed our products in Canada. And you'll see this through a commercial that we ran. This would have been probably about 10 years ago.
Canada is a land of helpers, neighbors who gladly lend a hand, pitching in whenever and wherever needed. Standing on guard for each other is a national promise. At French's, our promise is to use quality ingredients grown locally whenever possible and to support our communities. So when you buy French's, you're supporting a small town in Ontario, providing meals to families in need and keeping family farms in Saskatchewan strong. It's our way of saying thank you for showing us what's important. Proud to be at your table.
So that's a commercial that would play really well now, right? People would say, "Oh my gosh, we got to do that. That bad Donald Trump guy. That was way before any of this happened." So we were out there far, far in advance, being a pretty authentic company, changing our ingredients, changing the way we behaved. And it comes from that insight that says this: if people want to do the same thing all over the world, they want to take care of their families, then you need to be a global company, but you need to act local. Because if you do that, they see the brand as theirs. If you're just some brand that you go market the same way to everybody, guess what? You'll be successful if you have enough money to advertise. But if you advertise locally to them, the things that matter, and you incorporate your product, you have a much, much better way of being successful, and your brand equity goes through the roof. It really does. So, things are going pretty well for Elliot Penner. I'm pretty happy. Results are good. I'm feeling good about myself. Things are nice. And there's a company called 3G out there. It's an investment bank, right? They own a lot of businesses. They're Brazilian. And they get together with Warren Buffett and they buy Kraft Heinz. And they think, hey, we are going to be so big and powerful, we are going to just knock all the other food companies out. Well, I got this nice little niche business. I'm trying to fly under the radar here and things are good. And they go, we're going to launch mustard. What are you launching mustard for? You're a $1 zillion business. My little business, leave me alone. No, we're going to launch mustard because you know what? They want to buy us. Sounds a little bit like what's happening today with the country, right? They wanted to buy us. Now, the first thing you do is you sit down and you say, hey, what do we do? And your brand manager says to you, we need to protect mustard. So let's take our money and put it all behind mustard. We'll discount the product and we'll show them. Ooh, that makes me a little nervous as a business person, right? I already have mustard. I already spend money behind it. I have a profit margin I have to adhere to. And if I spend all my money against mustard and I just hold what I had, guess what happens to profits? They go down, right? Not so great for a shareholder. I don't know if that's a great thing. I know we got to protect, but I got to think of something else I can do. So what do? You look for value, right? You go out and you say, what do they do that I could do better? I look at ketchup. And we had been involved with farmers for a long time in Canada through our mustard seed and onions, and we had not really done much with tomatoes because tomatoes, they said, California is the place. That's where you get tomatoes. And while we bought a lot of tomatoes for barbecue sauce, we weren't in the ketchup business. Well, I knew they left Leamington. I knew they left farmers. And I went down and saw some farmers. I got to walk the fields there a little bit, found out the plight these farmers had, and understood that many of them were actually doing second jobs to pay the bills now. One was selling insurance. Another guy was driving a truck. Because guess what? They weren't selling tomatoes. I thought, well, why can't we launch ketchup? Why don't we go and launch ketchup against Heinz? Now, that sounds like an insane thing to do when they have like a 70 market share, right? But I found out they weren't buying locally, and they used high fructose corn syrup all over the United States. I thought, this is kind of an Achilles heel for them. So instead of protecting mustard, why don't I make them protect the single biggest thing they have? And that's what we did. We launched ketchup into North America. People told me I was nuts. Well, I can tell you, over the next 4 months, we got a 33, 34 market share. Queen's University talks about it as they've never seen this happen before. And we were the third biggest story in the country that year. Ketchup, Leamington, and tomatoes? It doesn't seem that exciting, I guess, in this country, but it was really exciting for people because they talked about it all the time. It never would have happened if we didn't have a belief that we could do something better. Now, during that time, the whole farmer thing in Leamington really started to throw me a little bit, and I thought, this is terrible. And, we need to really ramp up our business in a much different way to protect ourselves. And we started to work with Food Banks Canada. We started to work with all kinds of local initiatives to say, how do we become more ingrained in the community? Well, that chart right there is probably the nicest chart. Like if I could have it in my bedroom, if I could have it in my kitchen, I would have it. It was my lifetime at French's. And if you look at that chart, if you're in business and you see that chart, it is the most magical chart you can ever see in the world because it keeps going up. It keeps going up. Now, when we sold this business, McCormick bought it for $4.2 billion. Think of this, a $560 million, $600 million US business. You pay $4.2 billion for a mustard and hot sauce business. Why'd they do that? Because the brand was so strong. And where do you get results like that? Now, you can fake a quarter. You can fake a quarter. Guys do it all the time, right? They jack up the numbers. They don't pay their bill. You can fake 6 months. Maybe you can fake 2 years. I don't know. But you can't fake 20 years. You can't fake 20 years. And that shows you by having the right underpinnings in your business, by having a margin structure that helps you. By the way, our margins were 60%. 60% in the food industry that probably carries a margin of about 18 maybe. Unheard of. Our profit margin was 23, 25, 1 year 27. Think of that. 27 cents on every dollar. All the while delighting consumers, and it even gets better. Because part of the goal to really insulate us from the competition was to give back. It was to give back and tell consumers that they could help us to give back too. And this is where things start to really come together for me in my head. And again, go back to that message about hidden value in things that nobody cares about. I tried to buy a bunch of tomatoes because the bumper crop said, we have more tomatoes than we can use that year. I thought, well, geez, I'm using these Canadian tomatoes. I'll buy a pile of them. I'll put them into paste. I can keep them for the next year and save a lot of money. They wouldn't sell them to me. They said, Elliot, you're a nice guy. We love you. But all you're going to do is drive the price down for next year. So the cooperative that manages these farmers said, we're not going to sell them to you. Ouch. Well, what are you going to do with them? We're going to shovel them under. You're shoveling under enough tomatoes to fill the Sky Dome? Well, otherwise we'll just ruin our business. I get the metrics here. I really do. But to throw good food under the ground, it's just killing me to watch this. And it killed the farmers too. So I started thinking about this, and I thought, how the heck can we utilize that down the road? Now what we did, we started a campaign in our own business that said, if you buy a bottle of mustard or ketchup, you will donate a meal to food banks. And that was successful for us. Because what happened to us was, we became the single largest donator, I guess the single largest contributor to food banks in Canada. And I thought, this is pretty bad, right? I'm a little $500-some-odd million business. On their wall, they got pictures of, Walmart and Loblaws and all these companies, and I'm giving more than those companies? But it just shows you how successful that can be if you get people motivated behind it. And I started to really look at this in a different way, and the more I got involved with Food Banks Canada, the more I realized we have a real problem here, right? I mean, consumers in Canada, especially today, it's different than it was in the past. It used to be people that went to food banks were people that couldn't work, or maybe they had a problem, dependency issues, dad left. Today, 18% of consumers that go through a food bank have a job. And it's pretty expensive, especially in the urban centers, right? When you're trying to buy a house, trying to take care of your kids, and if one of you loses a job, it is difficult. And I started to get involved more with food banks, realizing, I wasn't gonna be the politician that said why. I was just gonna try and do good. Because everybody would argue and say, what are you talking about, Penny? There's food out there. What are you bothering with that? Well, that's true. But if you got a 6-year-old not eating dinner, who the heck am I to judge why that 6-year-old doesn't eat? I might not be happy with their parents, but who am I to judge that? Who am I to judge if a 75-year-old can't get dinner? Like, who am I to think about? I could say, well, you should have saved your money. You could have done a better job. That's not feeding the 75-year-old, is it? I started to say, forget about the why, let's do what matters. And we started to really get involved in food banks in a much different way. So it brought me back to where I was, right? People care about their communities, they care about what they do, they care about their families, they care about everybody else. And I thought, this was an interesting time for me, and what could I do in the future to really add some value? It kept on hitting me in the head. And remember, we're selling French's now, right? And I don't have a lot to do if I sell this business, because they asked me not to go to work for 2 years. They said, could you please work for us? And I said, well, I really don't want to work for you. But they said, well, you don't have to do much. We'll just pay you, but you can't do anything. So for 2 years, I didn't have a lot I could do, right? I thought, that's a waste of energy, isn't it? My wife would probably not like that I was home all the time doing nothing, so I had to find something to do, and this kept on hitting me over the head. Wasted product out there going under the ground, kids that aren't eating. I had a big impact with French's on food banks. What could I do? So I came up with this idea that if I could take surplus crop, surplus production, just surplus, things that people were already having, and I could somehow tap it through a partnership with these people, could I find a way to bring that food to market that wouldn't ruin the cooperatives that were out there, wouldn't ruin the price of the food, if I launched a line that just went to food banks? So now I can go to farmers, I can go to cooperatives, I can go to manufacturers, and I can say, I'm going to launch this line of products, because you might not realize this, food banks buy $40 million of food a year. So while people maybe donate sardines, they also donate money. But they weren't very effective in the way they purchased. And if I could find a way for them to make their dollars more valuable and not upset Loblaws or the market or anything else, that would be a real success. So I started to really dig deeply into this. And I really found that the opportunity was for me to actually become almost like a quasi-brand within food banks, like a private label for food banks. And as things started to get tougher and tougher for consumers, that became more and more valuable to them. So I was giving a talk in Toronto, and after I was done, the head of Food Banks Canada said, hey, Elliot, so what are you gonna do now? You're kind of got some free time. why don't you think about how you could take this to the next level for us? So I thought I would do the Paul Newman thing, I'll launch a brand. I'll stick my name on there and say, hey, here's a brand for you, get some money, we'll give it to food banks. My wife said, well, but you're not Paul Newman, Elliot. And I said, well, I recognize I'm not Paul Newman. I'm not going to say I'm Paul Newman. And I'm going to say it's, my brand. But you're not Paul Newman. Now, this kept on going on for about half an hour. And I finally said, I get that I'm not Paul Newman. Look at me. But I think we can do something different. But that's, again, when you start to dig a little deeper, right? It's not about selling at retail. It's about taking those resources and doing it directly with food banks. So we launched the EJP for Good Foundation. And it comes from that insight that I learned. People care about the same things. They care about their neighbors. They care about their families. They care about people in their community. And most of them are willing to help, and they have sometimes infrastructure that they can help with, but nobody asks. Nobody shows them how to do it. So what we started to do was we went around to all these people I knew, and I said, if I was going to do this, could you help me? Could you help me to build a brand and launch these products into food banks so they can buy them at cost? So instead of buying through a wholesaler with a markup from a manufacturer to a wholesaler to a retailer, we could go direct. And our costs are 50 to 60% less than they can buy, which means they can buy 50 to 60% more. And that's what we did. We found these partners. And I thought people would say, get lost. Not one partner said no. Not one. I was shocked. They had always, every company, every entity has a little bit of opportunity built in. And if you can take that opportunity and help them to do good with it, they're more than happy to give it to you. You can't hurt their business. You can't make them go broke. You can't make it difficult for them. But if you can find a way to take that little bit of excess, that little opportunity that exists, and they do good with it, they line up. They line up to help you. So that's what we did. We launched the For Good Foundation. The way it works is we get surplus crops or surplus inventory or surplus manufacturing capabilities. We package it into products that only is at Food Banks Canada. It goes through food banks and gets distributed across the country. We thought it would be a little idea. And I kind of thought I'll do this on the side. Well, to date, we've shipped over $50 million of food. We're the single largest contributor to food banks in Canada. Pretty unbelievable when we just thought about this little idea that we had. And now it's so big I can't get out of it, right? I'm here forever, I guess, doing this thing. And it has become this labor of love for everybody involved. I haven't had one partner leave, not one person say they want to stop. When I feel like I'm over asking, they tell me to stop and they want to give me more. It's because we found a way to help them to do good without really making it that difficult. Look at the people that are on here. The Canadian trucking industry had a tough go for a while there, right? They had the problems in Queen's Park and in Ottawa. And I can make the food, but how do I get it to food banks? It costs a lot of money to ship things. So I went and talked to the Canadian trucking industry. They have a little thing called Trucks for Change where they try to help out in the community. They saw it all and they said, Elliot, I think we can ship across Canada for you with our trucking partners. They started shipping all across Canada for free. That's pretty good. That really helps us a lot. And now we're not 50%, maybe we're 60% better. I needed a way to invoice it because I didn't want to have to hire employees. When you hire employees and add infrastructure, it costs money, right? And every dollar I want to go to food. Matter of fact, my family covers all the overheads. So any dollar donated to us, 100% of it, we're 100% efficient charity, goes to food. So I don't want to hire employees and have to pay for that overhead. So I say, well, people have invoicing. They have go-to-market strategies. So I get a distributor. And I say, you got to help me out here. Well, guess what? He distributes and invoices for us. Then we started to get bigger, and we thought, holy, this is getting a lot bigger. And guess what? CN started shipping our goods across the country by rail. And just about 3 months ago, Amazon came to us, and we used their backhaul opportunity, empty trucks to ship our products around the country. Like, think of these big companies. Not one of them has walked away. And you look at the food businesses up there. AGT Foods and Highbury Canco, that's the guys from Leamington. I started with ketchup. That's who we started it with. You know, Oceans and tuna. And you know, Barber's makes peanut butter. These people all give because they know it's the right thing to do, and we gave them a model that makes them do good without a lot of effort. And it has become this unbelievable partnership. And I'm lucky enough to be kind of the orchestra leader. That's it. They deserve all the credit, not me. They're the ones that do the work. I just get to be part of it. You know, Stikeman Elliott's one of the largest law firms in Canada. They said, we'll do all your legal stuff for you. And I'm hitting my friend up back there too, so he can help me too for the accounting maybe. But everybody on the board has a job. You see, we're not a group that you have a meeting and you get to have a free dinner and you pontificate about this. Everybody's got a job. So one of my board members is an accountant. One's a marketer. One's a lawyer. Everybody works because that's how you keep the infrastructure small, and that's how you become really, really successful. Like I said, we didn't want to embarrass anybody, so we went out of our way to make products that were great quality and were the products food banks were looking for. Our label, people have told me, could be in Whole Foods. It's a great-looking brand. And you know, we've got some things in the go. We may have something with a major retailer in Canada that wants to help us. And again, 100% of revenues and profits would go back to food. This is unheard of, right? I mean, most charities carry a 25, 30%. Who knows overhead that they pay people? You know, it's 100% efficient charity, which you just don't see, right? I think that's also the reason why people don't say no. When I tell them, you know, I pay the overhead, there's nothing in it for me, how's a CEO say no? It's kind of embarrassing, right? He's got to say, well, I'll get involved too then. Now, if I was making money and I had a big salary, he might say, well, you know, good for you, but no thanks. But when I say to him, it's all for the good, knowing that consumers, people, neighbors all want to do good, not one person has said no. Here's our lineup right now. We've got about 13 items or so, everything from pasta to pasta sauce to peanut butter to tuna, you name it. We have tried to launch. We just launched granola bars. They'll be out in about 2 months because Food Banks Canada really needs them for backpacks, for back to school and lunch programs. So we're listening to our consumer again, trying to launch products that they really want. That's the board I told you about. You know, I got a marketer, I got a brand person, I've got an accountant, I got a lawyer. They all work. Nobody gets anything. They don't even get a free donut. We don't have meetings with donuts. We do it virtually. Everybody just does it because it's the right thing to do. There's really nothing in it for them other than feeling good and doing good. And that's really where it ends up, right? $50 million of food that if they had to buy would probably be about, I don't know, maybe 90 million or 100 million. I don't know what it would be if they had to buy it. And we become the #1 contributor to food banks in Canada. And that's because I took a look and saw value in something somebody else didn't see, right? It goes back to that original lesson I learned. If you look strongly at something and you really think about it, there's untapped value in everything. There was excess capacity of product. There was excess capacity on manufacturing lines. There was excess capacity in goodwill. I just needed to find a way to bring it together. And that's where it ends up. After 3.5 years or so, $50 million of food for Canadians that need it most by partners and friends who just do it for the sake of doing good. And that's really the story. If I leave you with anything, it's don't miss that opportunity. Look a little longer. Think about what someone doesn't value and see the value in it. And you know, if you do that, you can take nothing and turn it into $50 million of good. Thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions or anything you need. Sure. Yeah.
Any questions from the audience?
Anybody fall asleep, first of all? I hope not. No? Anything for anybody? Sure. There's no bottom line because I give it all back. So you see, this is the interesting thing. It's not a business, it's a charity. So 100% of money that we get from donations or from anything we do, 100% of it goes back to food. So they're really, what's that? Yeah, it's tax-free because we don't take anything, right? There's nothing. It all goes back 100% to food. So there's no overhead, there's no charges. I can't, I basically pay for any overhead out of my own person, and everything else donated, anything we get goes right back to food. 100% of it goes back to food. So there's really no bottom line. And people ask me all the time, well, what's the future of this? And I say, well, what is the future? I don't know. I'm not trying to sell the thing. It's not a business. It's just doing good. And without my partners, I couldn't even do it. So it is really just, like I said, I get to be this lucky guy that gets to go around people and ask them for help. And when they say yes, we get to do good things. I'm just a lucky guy. Yes.
So what made you do this food bank? Like, what made you, and do you know the reason why there's so much people using the food bank?
Yeah, I mean, there's two questions, right? One is, as I got involved in local communities, I realized that people cared. And that really made me find something to help with something people cared about. And food insecurity is an issue. And it's not that we don't have food. We have more food than we can use. It's somehow getting that food to people that need help. And again, it's a real political conversation that I just, tend to avoid. People ask me, I don't say, hey, the government should do this and that, because you get down that path, it's a much different thing. My thing is, there's people going to the food bank for whatever reason.
I think people are divided because people are divided on the reason why. Some people blame the government, some people think they don't have enough money. What do you think is the main reason?
I mean, this is a personal view, nothing to do with the foundation. I think when you take away opportunities from people, the average person, whether it be not everybody's a doctor, not everybody's a lawyer, not everybody has the ability to take things and turn them into businesses, but they all want to do well and they want to take care of their family and friends. And when you take away that manufacturing sector, when you take away jobs that, you look back when I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, but we had a car, we had a house, my parents fed us. They could still provide that dream to their kids. You take that away and there's no place for them to find that. I think it's difficult, and I think it creates a kind of a cycle here. I just really, I don't count on the government to do everything for everybody. I think there's a lot of good out there and a lot of opportunity. We just got to challenge ourselves, and I think the best thing we could do is give people jobs,
I have to agree with you on that.
That's my view. I'm not a politician. I think that would make a lot of people happier. Hi.
Elliot, I'm just so moved. I can't thank you enough.
Great.
I used to be the London organizer for shelter for the homeless.
Sure.
And I think what you're doing is just magnificent, okay? And bless you. That's all I can say. But do you do hot meals for the homeless? Would you be able to expand into that as your next thing?
So, there's the homeless situation is much different than the working poor, right? You don't see a lot of homeless people at food banks because a lot of times they got to get there and they haven't got a car and they don't have whatever. And we've really looked at ready-to-eat meals. And AGT Foods does some things with the United Nations where they feed people around the world. And here's been our problem. I'm being honest about this. If I was to send food to Africa and it was enough food to nourish someone for the day, they will eat it and they'd be happy that we did it. If I took that same product and I brought it to Toronto, they don't like it. They won't eat it. So I've got to find a solution that is edible in their, from their taste point of view, that they would do. Hot meals are tougher and so is fresh. One of the opportunities I'm working on is a way for me to, and again, this is because I don't make any money here, right? The foundation is about putting back into food. So we're looking at a model that if we did have donations, could we do it through a wholesaler, that the food banks could purchase fresh food and put it into there. So it could be milk, it could be cheese, it could be things that I can't ship, right? And again, people say, why would you do that? Aren't you supporting your brand? It's not a brand. The whole goal is to get more food to people. So we're working on trying to get solutions. People have asked us about pop-top cans, because once again, you have no forks and knives out there. But hot food is a much different. It's been a different issue for us.
I just want to tell you that in London we do hot food for the homeless along the Thames.
The trust there.
But it's done. We give them Indian food, which they love because they
Sure.
think it's a treat.
Yeah.
They always think it's a treat. And I run a centre, Asher Centre,
Good for you.
in Gloucestershire, and we have fields of food,
Yeah.
and we just allow food banks to come and take the fresh food.
100%.
And I think that's something that could be an expansion of this. I think what you're doing is just so wonderful. I can't tell you. And allowing the farmers to allow people on to do the picking and use fresh foods.
So it's
We're finding it very successful.
there are so many opportunities that it overwhelms you. That's what I find. And what I'm always challenging my board is to be focused and to actually have a delivery. So, someone will say to me, I've got 3 truckloads of peppers. I go, that's great. The amount of energy to take those peppers and find something, I can get probably $5 million of food to people. So I look and I say, there's different organizations that do a really good job of that in the local area. And I work with them and help them to scale up. But for me, it becomes much more monumental if I can get $100 million of food to people versus that 3 truckloads of peppers. It doesn't mean that's bad. It just means I need to put them and help them do that. And the same thing we do. We donate to kitchens and food kitchens, and they actually make food right in, for people that have a lot of other issues going on. They make hot meals for them. But I think this thing about how can I get ready-to-go food for the homeless is something we're really looking at closely, and we've just got to find the right mechanism to do that, Good for you for doing that. It's a really a good thing. Good for you. Anybody else?
Hi, thank you very much for your wonderful, moving story and the way you started and where you have transformed in so many years. Food has always been a very, very loving subject for me.
Yeah, me too. I can see it. I like it.
In my life, and so for the others. And one of my biggest dreams in my life, if I can even come very close to it or a little bit close to it, is to feed the needy and the poor in the third world countries, where leave alone hot meals, but just getting a clean glass of water is a dream for people.
Right on.
And having said that, I think you have already brought a platform together in so many years, locally, I would say. I don't know if you've been doing this globally in the third world countries. I think we are really blessed. I come from India. I've been here 30 years now. And I see that people really go crazy with food, and the kind of wastage would feed countries together.
Yep.
If we can come or we can piggyback on something what you're doing with your kind of a platform, if you are thinking about it, I'm more than willing to help, as you say, for free. This is something very close to my heart. And if you can do something or just a seed can bring a big crop tomorrow.
So you speak to a really important topic, right? People have said to me, Elliot, take this model, go to the States, take this model, go somewhere, And my board says, we need to hire 6 people to help you. And I get really nervous about that, because when I see charities, not every charity, of course, but you see them, and they become more about the infrastructure than they do the good. It just drives me crazy. And I see that in food banks, too. There's a politics of it. There's people that have hierarchy, And here I am, just a dumb mustard salesman putting this thing together, and that really makes me nervous. So part of it is, how do I grow it without creating this infrastructure that no matter how much you care, can sometimes go off the tracks. See, I can look at you today, and I can say 100% of every dollar goes to food. And I have no fear of anybody auditing me or checking me, because the only rule we have is I can write a check in, but I can't write a check out. And I feel really good about that. Now, if it's at arm's length, and it's in another country, and I got 16 people between me, I probably can't say that with the same conviction, right? So it's something that I'm really wrestling with, because the model is really simple and you can do it, and there's good people all over the world. And you know what? I could spend my life flying around and feel like some great ambassador. But the fact is, I got so much I can do in Canada right now. I probably keep busy for the next 2 to 3 years just doing this. But I'm not against helping. I just don't want to put what we've done at risk. Transparency is so important. And if I ever got caught doing something wrong, all this goes out, right? It all goes away. You got to build trust, and then you got to earn it, and you got to keep it. You screw up once, it's over. So I understand it, but I'm really nervous about losing that control that I can say it's 100% efficient. So I'm happy to help you. I just don't know if I could be the guy that launches the infrastructure for you, right? But I'm happy to help for sure.
Not so much as a question, as a response to two of the comments made after your wonderful talk. So thank you for what you're doing.
Sure.
To the point made by Zerbano Gifford, who's great into interfaith stuff, there's a model in the United States at least. There's a Society of St. Andrew. And what they do is they go into the Christian, the Bible, which talks about gleaning. It goes into the Old Testament. And the farmers leave a portion of their field for anybody who needs food to come and take it for free. They've taken it to the next level, and they ask for volunteers to come and do the gleaning. And there are trucking companies who wish to help. And we have done this twice already in Washington, D.C.
Is the gleaners?
The gleaners.
Sure, yeah.
The Society of St. Andrew sent a whole truckload of potatoes picked in Maine down to Washington, D.C., where we have a lot of homeless people, and food banks. And we did it twice, and we did it thrice. I think Rohinton Rivetna did it once in Chicago. So there is this opportunity to feed people through gleaning. That's one. To the point made in the back for sending food to India, there's a thing called Akshaya Patra. And what they do is, there are very wealthy immigrants from India in United States and Canada who want to help. So they adopt a school in India and say, we will provide food for all the children in that school with fresh, hot food. They provide a kitchen, they provide the food, they provide the money for the food to be served, and one family in the United States adopts a middle school in India, and it's been going for 25 years. And there are, by the way, there are a lot of Parsis who have been promoting this, big names who come on that platform of Akshaya Patra and make it happen. So I'm so delighted with this flavor of the world's Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce, where money and business can be used to help the hungry. So thank you very much to the organizers and to you for sharing.
That's great. You know, the Gleaners are in Windsor, and we've worked with them. They've got a little portable canning factory they take around, and when they have an excess of corn or whatever, they package it up and do it. So it's alive here. Again, it's another model that you can help, you know, and it does good. And it's just people that want to, you know, they want to do good. That's what it is. And then when you say people like there's wealthy Indians that want to give back, it goes back to that original, you know, original insight. People want to help. They really do. The average person's a pretty nice person. They really do. We have all our differences, but the average person wants to help out, you know? Okay. Thank you very much for all your attention. Thank you.